Hello, everybody. I'm Sister Raven. This is Sister October. That's the devil. And welcome back to our channel.
Subscribe to become part of the hive. Be sure to like and ring the notification bell. Thanks, honeybees. Enjoy the video.
Hello, friends of the congregation. We are back today with a new video talking about 3 different movies. A lot of nun devil sort of movies coming out pretty recently. I feel those come out all the time: possessions, ghosts, demons, nuns, whatever. But 2 of the movies we're going to talk about today, Immaculate and The First Omen, are both what you might call nun-sploitation movies that came out pretty much at the same time. And right before that was the movie Late Night with the Devil, which is a little bit different, but I thought fit well in with what we're talking about today. So we're going to talk about those 3 movies. By the way, if you like the devil beanie that Jasper is wearing today, you can get one at my Etsy shop. I'll put the link in the description below. So I want to start with the movie that I saw first out of the 3 of these, and that's Late Night with the Devil. Late Night with the Devil stars David Dastmalchian, who I know as Polka Dot Man from the Suicide Squad, but he's been in a lot of stuff. He's a good actor. He stars as Jack Delroy. This whole movie is essentially a found footage / documentary style movie. It's framed as a documentary on what happened the night of the events of this movie. Jack Delroy hosts a late night show called Night Owls with Jack Delroy. This takes place in the 1970s, specifically on Halloween in 1977. This show, Night Owls with Jack Delroy, competes with Johnny Carson, and it's just kind of like your regular like late night talk show type of thing. It's a variety talk show. They have different guests. It reminds me of kind of like early like Jerry Springer style thing. A really interesting style of show, I think, that isn't really quite around anymore. But we get the whole history kind of documentary style about what happened leading up to Halloween 1977. Jack Delroy finds success. He has a wife who he loves. He's got a lot of things going for him, and then his wife ends up getting cancer, and his wife unfortunately gets cancer and passes away, after which he decides to come back full force with an occult-themed episode on Halloween, and that's where we are during most of the events of the film. So in this episode, he invites a psychic. He has this former magician, now turned skeptic, who is kind of questioning everything happening on the show. But the main attraction of the show, really, the main guest here, is a parapsychologist named June, and her subject, Lily, who's a little girl who was the sole survivor of a cult mass suicide. And Lily is able to be sort of possessed by this demon that she calls Mr. Wriggles. It might be the devil, it might just be a demon. We're really not sure. One thing that I do kind of like about this movie is the ambiguity of everything that's going on. Is it real? Is it not? The psychic stuff kind of starts out, oh, just a regular psychic kind of making guesses until he gets something right, but then it slowly becomes more and more real. And then he has this really scary moment of possession, throwing up black blood. All the while, of course, the skeptic is questioning everything, even when we get to the point where Jack Delroy, who wants to do anything for ratings, with the assistance of his producer, who is encouraging him to do whatever he can, but everybody else, including Gus, his kind of right-hand man, as is the format in many late-night talk shows, is telling him that he's going too far, and it's kind of this whole conflict within the show itself. We get to the point where he asks June to kind of bring Mr. Wriggles out of Lily. So they strap Lily down. June originally doesn't want to agree, and she eventually agrees, and we get this possession scene of Lily being possessed by a demon, or what could be the devil, and calling out Jack Delroy. Now here's where more of the ambiguity comes in. This is definitely real. We're supposed to think that it's definitely real. There's an actual demon possession going on, and it's kind of hard to fight that. The skeptic tries, which is also a very interesting scene, but we'll get to that in a second, where the demon inside of Lily tells Jack that they've met before. Now, there's implications along the way that Jack is part of this group of rich people who kind of get together in the woods in the Grove in California, and it's heavily implied that there was some sort of deal with the devil that he made. And in doing so, he is kind of responsible for the death of his wife. He didn't know what he was agreeing to, but he was agreeing to give up something for success, and that ended up being his wife, and that's why she got sick. So we're seeing kind of these visions of all of that being revealed while this demon possession is going on. So there's a lot of story to keep up with. And like I said, mostly everything is heavily implied and we're kind of putting it together as we watch. Nothing is exactly outright stated. But like I said, back to the skeptic, the whole time he's questioning everything and he ends up doing a little hallucination trick on the audience, which is also a fun little scary scene. I don't really want to give too much away, so I'm kind of just going over essentially what happens in the plot. Kind of some spoilers right there, but it's definitely something you need to sit down and watch to understand. Really, what I like the most about this movie was the style. The style of a 1970s talk show. It definitely looked like that. And because it was a documentary slash found footage style, they're using the actual footage from the show as it aired. And they have some behind the scenes footage as well. And I like the switch between what is on camera and what is off camera. On camera, everything's in full color. And then when the cameras turn off, the behind the scenes footage is all in black and white. So it's easy to keep up with what's happening when. And just seeing the switch between how the characters act when they are on screen versus how they act when they are off screen or supposed to be off screen. And all of these events happening build up to this big kind of nightmare hallucination sequence at the end where Jack sees his wife. It's again implied that it's his fault that she died. He, in this nightmare hallucination, kills her to take her out of her misery, then comes to out of the hallucination to find that he has killed Lily, the little girl possessed by the demon. And that's the end of the show, Night Owls, but also the movie. It ends in quite a bit of disaster. If there's one thing I could complain about, it's that at the end with the nightmare sequence, that part doesn't really make sense with the documentary style because how are we seeing what Jack sees in his brain? Like I said, that's a hallucination on Jack's part. Jack is seeing things that aren't really real. What's actually happening is he's stabbing Lily, but we don't see that. We see what Jack sees. So the found footage part kind of gets lost on that point. But up until that point, they stuck with the style and I really liked it. And then just a little nightmare sequence at the end. It did work to continue that ambiguity of what is real and what is not. So yes, they abandoned the style, but it was for the sake of the movie. And all in all, I did think it was a pretty good movie. Not scary. I wasn't scared at all, but it was more like intrigue. It was a really interesting movie and I wanted to know what was going on. And the characters all did really well, especially Lily, the little girl. She kind of has this like creepy little kid thing going on, but not too over the top like we've seen in other movies before. She had her own version of it, which I really appreciated. And then David Desmalkian, Jack Delroy, he's always great. I've loved him in everything I've seen him do. And he fit this kind of like sleazy, cheesy late night character guy really well. And then just based on like the ambiguity and the sequence of events, the writing was also really well. And then of course the production design. I really liked the 1970s talk show set and how the whole movie pretty much takes place there unless it's a hallucination or dream sequence. And that was really interesting too. I really enjoy movies where everything kind of happens in one place. It's very contained, but still over the top. There's a lot of things happening. So Late Night with the Devil, I definitely recommend. I think it's streaming now, so that's good. And I give that one a 3.5 out of 5. I might have to watch it again because it might be a 4 if I watched it again. Sometimes I got to watch things a couple times to really appreciate them, but for right now, Late Night with the Devil, 3.5 out of 5, and I do recommend it. Now I want to get to the First Omen because that's what I saw next. I'm going to be talking about these movies in the order that I saw them because I think that's important when it comes to the First Omen and Immaculate. I'm going to be comparing the two a little bit throughout this. So for that reason, I'm not going to do my normal thing of walking through every scene of the movie and telling you the events. Let's just assume that you've seen these movies. If you haven't, I do recommend all three. So definitely watch all three of them. There will be spoilers, but I'll be kind of summing up the events. Basically, The First Omen is a prequel to The Omen from 1976. And then I think it was remade in like 2006. But The Omen, movie about Damien, the son of the devil. First Omen is technically the sixth film in the Omen franchise, but you don't need to have seen all of them to understand the First Omen. Really, you just need to have seen The Omen. And really then, you didn't have to, but I do think it kind of helps understand some of the reveals that happen in the film because this movie is essentially how Damien from The Omen got conceived and was born, which I think is an interesting angle to make this prequel about? I mean, what else could they have made it about? You know what I mean? Because in The Omen, we start out with Damien after he is already born and he is given to this American politician in replacement of the baby that his wife lost, and then Damien grows up and we see him mostly as a child. This is how Damien even came to be. So this movie takes place in Rome in 1971, and we're focusing on this young nun or nun to be named Margaret. She's coming from America to come take her vows and be part of this covenant slash orphanage in Rome. And she starts out just being like your normal good girl nun. She's very sweet. She gets along with the children and the other nuns there at first, but very slowly things start to get a little weird. First off, it starts out kind of fun. She has this kind of wild roommate named Luz, who is also a nun to be. And before they take their vows, there's a few weeks there, implied days, weeks, something like that, before they are able to take their vows, where they go out dancing. She has kind of this super fun night, and she's never been out before. She wears this fun outfit. She meets this guy, and then she wakes up the next day not remembering anything. And then from there, she just goes back to working in this orphanage, working with the children. Specifically, there's one child named Carlita, who is very mistreated by the nuns there. She's often locked up and isolated from the other children. She makes these disturbing drawings, and Margaret takes it upon herself to kind of look after Carlita, because when Margaret was a child in America, raised also in an orphanage with nuns, she used to see visions, these like kind of demonic visions that got her into a lot of trouble when she was a kid. So she relates to Carlita in that way because Carlita is kind of going through the same thing. Things start to get weird surrounding Carlita. There's another nun named Sister Angelica. She's kind of a little weirdo nun who also has kind of this connection with Carlita. She spends a lot of time with her, but she's not wholly appropriate with her. And that relationship between Sister Angelica and Carlita comes to a head when Sister Angelica ends up hanging herself by jumping off the roof of the convent with a rope tied around her neck. And before she does so, she says, "It's all for you," to Carlita, which if you've seen The Omen from 1977 or 1976, whatever I said before, that's something that Damien's nanny slash babysitter said before doing the same thing. "It's all for you, Damien, it's all for you." And then she also hangs herself by jumping off a building. So connections to the original there, which I did appreciate as someone who has seen the original The Omen and a bunch of its subsequent sequels, because you kind of need that connection. It's not just about like a reveal at the end, oh, this is Damien. There needs to be a couple other pieces there for that to pay off, and that's a piece that I really liked, that constant theme of people killing themselves over the children of the devil, which we find out later Carlita is. Margaret, with the help of this man, Father Brennan, who we see in the beginning of the movie, and then kind of throughout trying to get the attention of Margaret to let her know that something is happening. Father Brennan, played by the same guy, I forget his name, but the same guy who played the dad in The Witch, the Roger Ebert movie, who has a really sexy, deep voice. I didn't appreciate it much in The Witch because the way that they spoke in The Witch with their accent, I could not understand a word anybody was saying in that movie, especially the father. Could not understand a word the guy was saying the whole time. In this movie, as Father Brennan, I did understand him, and I could definitely appreciate his super deep, smoky voice a lot more.
My name is Father Brennan. I apologize for startling you. Please, sit with me. This will only take a few minutes.
But beside the point, Father Brennan and Margaret unlock this sort of conspiracy of this church trying and failing multiple times to create sort of a vessel, a woman who will eventually give birth to the Antichrist. And Carlita is one of the babies from that project. Margaret finds this whole file of multiple baby girls who have been born, each with their own mark of the devil, the 666 symbol, kind of in a little circle like that, in different places. That's their birthmark. And most of these babies have been horribly deformed and did not make it past infancy. Carlita is seemingly the only one who has survived. And Margaret sees her mark to prove that she is this baby inside of her mouth at the top of her palate right there. There's a little 666. Proving that Carlita is this surviving vessel baby who is supposedly destined to get impregnated and birth the Antichrist. However, in this discovery, they find that there is one missing picture of Father Brennan, Margaret, working to uncover this conspiracy together, find that there is a missing picture in one of these files from another baby. we end up getting this reveal that Margaret is that baby because they see the picture and see that the mark is on that baby's head, but that is not Carlita because Carlita's mark is inside her mouth. And so we find out that it's actually Margaret, and she herself has the mark on her head. So the reason that she was brought from America to Rome is that she has finally come of age and is ready to get impregnated with the Antichrist. And there's a lot of lead up to this. Those demonic kind of hallucinations that I was talking about earlier, the visions that Margaret had as a child, start to come back when she is in Rome. There's this great scene where the nuns take the orphans into town, and there's this riot. This is happening during a time of leftist riots, and Margaret has a breakdown during one of these riots. But then also at the Covenant, she is having these visions, seeing these things that aren't there, and everything that happened to her and a child is starting to come back. Thus her connection with Carlita. But of course, after this discovery, she tries to escape, but the church finds her. Suddenly, she becomes very pregnant very fast. She is strapped down to a table and gives birth to twins, one girl and one boy. The boy, of course, being Damien, who the nuns whisk away and give off to that American politician from The Omen. The baby girl and Margaret herself, the nuns and everyone else in the Covenant, try to hide away by burning the chamber down. Carlita saves Margaret and the little girl, and they go off to live on their own off the grid in the mountains, later to be found by Father Brennan, who tells her that they have named her baby boy Damien, and he is now living in America, and he is destined to be the Antichrist. And that's where the movie ends. I do want to note that there is a quick moment after Margaret gives birth to the twins where she requests to hold the baby boy. They don't give a fuck about the baby girl. After she's born, they just kind of put her on a table. But the baby boy, everyone's like, oh my God, here he is, the Antichrist. Margaret asks to hold him, and then she goes to almost kill him, but can't bring herself to do it. And then the nuns stab her, try to leave her for dead before Carlita finds her and rescues her. And that'll become important later when we compare this movie to Immaculate. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Raven, as a good Christian woman, what would you have done in this situation? You've been impregnated by this jackal. You give birth to these two devil babies, and you're holding one in your hand about to kill it. What would you do? I would probably do what Margaret did. I don't think I could bring myself to kill this child, especially because it didn't look like a demon baby. It wasn't like Rosemary's Baby. It wasn't like the baby in Immaculate that we're going to get to. I probably wouldn't be able to kill it either. I wouldn't want them to take him away from me. I would try to run away with my twins, but you know, you can only do so much in that situation. But I still would have done what Margaret did after and go and try to live a nice life off the grid with Carlita and the little girl that I gave birth to. There's really nothing I could do about it at that point, right? So my son's the Antichrist. They already sent him off to America. These are powers beyond my control. Just leave me alone. Let me have my own little family. I'm sure that Damien, when he comes of age, isn't going to kill me because I am his mother. He'll let me live, and that's all I want, is just to live in the mountains with my own little family. So I would have done exactly what Margaret did, probably. But that's The First Omen. And I really like that movie, actually. It's maybe the best movie in the Omen franchise. Definitely the best sequel/prequel. The Omen, the original, it's a good movie. It's fine. I did like it a lot when I watched it. This movie might even be better than that, but you can't have this movie without that movie. So those two are good. Those really should be the only canonical movies in that franchise because the sequels don't stack up nearly as well. I really like the characters in this movie. Margaret, who is the protagonist, really carries the film. I really buy into her character. She feels very realistic. The lead up of events and how she reacts to them feels very realistic because obviously she is horrified and unbelieving of it until there is some solid concrete proof, and then she tries to do her best to deal with it. I do like at the end she gets away and tries to live a happy life with Carlita and her baby girl, who is also technically the daughter of the devil, but that's fine. They're not going to do anything about that. They're going to try to live as best they can. There's little images of the jackal, the devil jackal, that impregnated her that night that she can't remember when she was out dancing is when that happened. And the images of him, he's kind of like the monster of the movie. We see him from time to time. He's mostly like a CGI monster, but they use him so briefly that I didn't care about that. And it made it scarier that way that we didn't really get a full image of him. We saw him in visions and we saw him burning at the end. But other than that, it's kind of just hints that he existed. And there's a lot of creepy stuff in this movie that's not just related to the main plot. There is a different birth scene, and it's a really traumatic birth scene. We're seeing her give birth, and we see it actually kind of coming out of the area, but it's not a baby. It's this devil jackal hand, and it's very disturbing, and I had to look away because birth stuff like that really gets to me. It scares the shit out of me. So the fact that this movie could make me like squirm like that is a plus. That's definitely a good thing. That's what I want from a horror movie. And then of course the production design of this just being in Italy, beautiful Covenant, beautiful area. So it was also just nice to watch, whether there was horrible things happening on screen or not. It was a good watch. So the First Omen, I give that 3.5 out of 5. Moving on to Immaculate. I saw Immaculate the day after I saw The First Omen, so it's kind of impossible for me not to compare them. I do think it was a detriment to both films that they came out at the same time, because after seeing Immaculate, I felt like I liked The First Omen more, but I think I thought that way only because I saw The First Omen first. Because while I was watching Immaculate, there was a bunch of very common themes there. I mean, it's about a nun in Rome. There's a birth, there's a lot of common themes with that movie. They are different fundamentally, and obviously one is a prequel and one is its own thing, but it was impossible for me not to compare them. So, because of that, I didn't really see Immaculate as the good, unique film that it is, because it came out at the same time as another very similar movie. And maybe if I had seen Immaculate first, I would think that that was the better movie. So I think the argument of which is better can be determined by if you're seeing first, if you see both movies, and if you do, which one you see first, and how big of a break you take in between seeing them. I think this movie would have done a lot better if it came out more in like September, or just any completely different time where we could kind of forget about The First Omen first and then go to Immaculate, or vice versa, so that they can kind of have their own time being the Nun movie in theaters. But there was two at the same time, so like I said, impossible not to compare, at least for me. Immaculate stars Sydney Sweeney as Sister Cecilia, who at the beginning of the film comes from America. She is invited from a convent in America to move to this convent in Rome, because I guess you can't be a nun unless you're in Rome. So you have to go to Rome if you're going to be a nun. Nuns don't exist anywhere else. But you know what? I can't really complain, because if I was going to be a nun, I wouldn't want to do it anywhere else than the beautiful country of Italy. So I can't complain about that too much. It is just interesting that in both movies, it's a girl from America being invited to join a convent in Rome. So, but it's fine. And this convent is not an orphanage. It is a convent specifically for old dying nuns to live out the rest of their days in comfort, and the younger nuns take care of them. So that's what Sister Cecilia will be doing. She become friends with this girl, Sister Gwen, who I kind of compare to the crazy roommate Luz from the previous movie, from The First Omen, but it's a little bit different. Gwen isn't quite as wild, but she is very outspoken, and that comes into play later. But they have a connection, they become friends, and there's another sister, Sister Isabel, who is teaching the new upcoming nuns because they haven't taken their vows yet. And she's very strict and isn't quite as friendly as the other nuns that Sister Cecilia encounters, including Mother Superior, who's very kind to her at first, and the priest who invited her to come there, Father Sal Tedeschi. So Sister Cecilia goes to this convent. She does take her vows and becomes a nun. That actually didn't happen in The First Omen. With all the weird events and Margaret's breakdown and everything, they decided not to let her take her vows to become a nun, so she actually never really ended up doing it. Whereas in Immaculate, Sister Cecilia gets to do that kind of right away. Sort of both before and after that happens, Cecilia starts to notice odd things happening around the convent. One, they have this giant nail on display in like their main church room that they claim is one of the nails that was used to crucify Jesus. So it has kind of his little bits of like dried blood on it, which are somehow still there after all this time. And that very much overwhelms Cecilia. But other things too. Some of the elderly nuns are kind of losing their minds and start to walk around at night. Cecilia helps one and finds that she has crosses burned onto her feet, and just kind of little weird things like that are happening. And this all comes to a point where The father and Mother Superior and some other leaders of the covenant question Cecilia on if she's a virgin, if she's had relations with a man while she was there, if she's ever had relations with a man. She denies it. She says, "No, I'm a virgin. I am pure. I am clean. Why are you asking me this?" And it's because she's pregnant. After she fainted from seeing the nail from Jesus, they took her to the doctor. She peed in a cup. They tested it and found out that she was pregnant. And because she claims to be a virgin, and it was proven that she was a virgin based on her physical that she had when she had first entered the covenant, they start treating her like the Virgin Mary because they assume that she is carrying the Savior. So, again, unwillfully pregnant nun, just like in the First Omen, but instead of the Antichrist, it is the second coming of Jesus, which is interesting. I've seen a lot of movies where nuns or just women who aren't nuns get pregnant with the Antichrist unwillingly. I can't think of any movies I've seen where somebody unwillingly gets pregnant with the second coming of Jesus, so that was really actually unique. And now that it's been a while since I've seen that movie, I'm able to kind of realize that more. Because if you want to make a pregnant nun movie, there's really only two ways you could go about it. It's either the Antichrist or Jesus. So these movies kind of highlight both sides of the coin, I guess. So we go through Cecilia's whole pregnancy. It's not a super quick pregnancy like Margaret's was. It's a real 9-month pregnancy, and we kind of see the events of each trimester go on, and it just keeps getting weirder and weirder. Once she is a little bit later into her pregnancy, Sister Isabel tries to drown her because she's jealous. She keeps saying, "It should have been me, it should have been me." Presumably, she wanted to be the next Virgin Mary. She wanted to be the one to carry the Savior, which I understand that jealousy, but she did definitely go too far. But then Sister Isabel ends up presumably killing herself because she falls off of the roof of the Covenant. Again, I couldn't help but think that it was very much like the scene from the First Omen where Sister Angelica hangs herself by jumping off the roof. Except in this case, she's not hung, she just simply walks off, and we see her mutilated, bloody body on the ground. Very disturbing, but in a good way, because that's what you want from this kind of movie. So, of course, while all these strange things are happening, Cecilia's friend, Sister Gwen, starts to speak out more and more about it, and she chastises the priests for not helping Cecilia more. They never take her to a real hospital. Everything that's happening is completely unexplained. No one knows what's going on. Cecilia is just sort of stuck with this, and it's very unfair. And Sister Gwen lets everybody know how she feels about it. And as a punishment, she ends up getting her tongue cut off. And Cecilia sees that when she's not supposed to and decides that she needs to get out of there. So she tries to fake a miscarriage by covering herself in chicken blood. They take her out of the Covenant on the way to a real hospital before discovering that she faked it. She tries to run, but her escapes fail. And when she is taken back to the Covenant, everything is revealed. Turns out, Father Sal, before he was a priest, was a geneticist, and he used the DNA on the nail that they took from Jesus' crucifixion to impregnate multiple nuns over the years, multiple women over the years, to try to get them to conceive a savior, and it's never been a success until now. So again, going back to comparing to the First Omen, multiple attempts here at trying to find a mother to the Antichrist, and multiple failed attempts at trying to find a mother of the new savior until the events of the movie. Obviously, Cecilia is horrified, but she can't really get away because she is heavily pregnant, and Father Sal brands her feet with a cross, just like she saw the other nun, who maybe was another subject of this that had lost the fetus and failed. So at this point, Cecilia's in her last trimester. She's helpless. There's not much she can do. She's strapped to her bed waiting to give birth, but she's not giving up. She is being monitored by Mother Superior. She ends up beating her to death. Very bloody, but not something you would expect a nun to do, so very shocking. I do like the shocking imagery, the shocking gore that went on throughout Immaculate, like the tongue being cut off and the sister falling off the roof, which I wanted in this kind of movie. Some horror, you want like the slow burn, ominous sort of thing going on, but I think it's cool to have that paired with these super shocking moments, like ominous, creepy, and then bam, hits you in the face. It's like little payoffs throughout the movie, and I really enjoyed that. In Cecilia's rampage, after she kills Mother Superior, she strangles another priest to get out of there. She goes to Father Sal's lab, burns it down so they can never try this again, and tries to burn him down with it, but somehow he ends up getting out and putting the fire out. So So they go beneath the covenant in these catacombs, which is another really cool set piece, the catacombs that they kind of go through. It's this maze. It's really intense. There's bones down there. And Cecilia's doing all this, running away under these catacombs while she is full term pregnant. This comes to a head in the final battle between Cecilia and Father Sal, where she tries to cut her stomach open. Yet another very traumatic birth sort of situation, which was very hard for me to watch because it's a very slow, deep cut. But Cecilia took the nail, the Jesus nail from earlier, and stabs Father Sal in the neck before he can finish cutting her stomach. Which, if it were me and I had that nail, I would have tried to stab him before he cut that much of my stomach. But, shock, she's hurt. Can't really fault her too much on that. She did end up saving herself in the end, so it's fine. She breaks out of the catacombs and out in the beautiful Italian countryside gives birth to the Savior. And this scene is also very intense. We don't see anything happening down below. We just see her face while she is screaming and pushing until the baby falls out. And we don't actually see this baby, this thing, whatever it is, but we can hear it. And it's making these very animalistic, creepy sounds like, like I don't even know how to recreate it, but it's like that. And Cecilia, with anger and pain, walks over to this big rock, picks it up, smashes it on the baby. That's the end of the movie. Now I know what you're thinking yet again. Raven, as a good Christian woman, what would you have done in this situation? Now, I'd like to say that I wouldn't kill my baby, regardless of whether he's the savior, whether he's the Antichrist, whatever he is, that's my baby. I'm a very emotional, sentimental kind of person, and I feel like I would feel connected to this child. However, since we don't see the baby, it's kind of hard for me to determine how I would feel, because if it just looked like a baby, like the babies in the First Omen, Damien and the sister, who look just like babies, I would have done what Margaret did and I wouldn't be able to kill it. But in hearing this abomination of a child struggle to breathe and make sounds, I can only assume that he was very deformed. In Immaculate, we see Father Sal's previous attempts. We see these weird deformed fetuses, so I can only assume that this child did not look like a child at all. So I probably would have done the same thing as Cecilia in that case if I gave birth to some little weird deformed freak that's probably not going to last a couple of days anyway. I'd put it out of its misery. I mean, also considering that he was conceived from very, very old DNA on this nail, who's to say if it was even Jesus's? If it was, that certainly would be a miracle if he came out looking normal. But regardless, it was something pulled off of this centuries old nail. I can't imagine that would be a normal looking child. And even if it really were Jesus's DNA, not that humans have evolved since then or anything in a significant way, but things are different. That baby has no chance of surviving having half the DNA of a man born in the BC times. You know what I mean? There's just no way. It's just unnatural. And so I'm on Cecilia's side with this one. I would like to think if it was a normal looking baby, I would think it would be pretty cool to raise a baby that technically has the DNA of Jesus. It's technically Jesus's child, because I feel like you're guaranteed going to heaven that way. You know what I mean? You literally gave birth to Jesus's child. But who's to say? Who's to say what would actually happen? I feel like Cecilia made the right choice in just obliterating that little abomination. I hope that she went on to have a happy, fruitful life after that. I mean, lots of trauma to live through in both cases, but I hope she can kind of do what Margaret did and kind of go and live off the grid for a while and just do her own thing. So that was Immaculate. Again, right after I saw it, I didn't feel like it was that great just because I had just seen the First Omen and the whole time I was just thinking about that. But in reflection of the movie, after I've sat on it for a while, I am realizing that it was pretty good, and it was its own unique, full story, and as a movie, had all the elements that I liked. Production design, the ominous score and sound, the weirdness of it all. So I really can't fault it for anything, because again, I'm not accusing either of these movies of copying the other. Of course not. Because like I said, there's only so many things you can do when your story is about a nun, of course there's going to be a covenant. Of course you're going to want it in Rome because that's where the Pope is. That's where the main nun shit happens. But they do still manage to be different, though there are many similarities. But they're both good. Immaculate, I also give 3.5 out of 5, although in reflection talking about it, I do think it probably more deserves a 4 out of 5. It's just the detriment of it coming out at the same time as the First Omen that kind of brings it down a little bit for me. But if I saw it separately, I probably would end up giving it a 4 out of 5, and I might down the line. All in all, 3 very well done movies today about the devil, about religion, about nuns, about a lot of things that are all very similar but also very different and very unique and special in their own right. So, all 3 of these movies today, Late Night with the Devil, The First Omen, Immaculate, I do recommend each of them, but space them out if you haven't seen any of them, or if you've seen a few, watch them a little bit spaced out so that they can each get the time and recognition that they deserve on their own. And that's all I have to say about these 3 movies today. Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you've seen any of these, I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thanks for watching, honeybees. Make sure to like and subscribe. Bye.
Meow. You want to stay? You going to stay? Sat right here. Sat right here for the whole video. Yay! Yeah? You want to stay for the whole video?